What's going on, advocates? Welcome back to another edition of the Black Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Reg. Joined today with me is an innovator. That's where I'm gonna go with it. Innovation. I'm gonna go with innovator. I think it's gonna be an interesting conversation today. I don't introduce anybody. I let people introduce themselves how they want to present to the world because I don't like to miss credentials or all the things that people work hard for. So please introduce yourself to the people.
What's good? What's poppin'? Let's say what it is, what it do, what's up. My name is LindoYes. I'm a spoken word poet that been investing a lot of my career in what they would consider visual poetics, you know. And that just means I'm like always trying to figure out ways that I can pair my words to images and I just like to look at the world as my canvas, and I paint images with words. So that's just been like the driving force behind my art lately.
Mm, paint images with words. So the first thing that popped up first is how did you get your name or how did you come up with your name? And then I want to go back to that painting images with words.
I listen to a lot of trap music, and in that street culture, it's just like the morality of it can be gray sometimes.
Mm,
But what has to stand true is like your integrity and the things that you want to live by that's not going to be affected by others. And the wealthiest thing you have is that your personhood. So like it's this idea that comes about is just like my name is my name. So
mm.
LindoYes is just like who I am, I'm sure about, I'm confident about. And even if that changed, I know that it's consistent with just like discovering who I am in that process. So like it was just like a sense of affirmation, just like my name is my name. So LindoYes is just another way of saying that.
Nah, see,
Yeah.
this is why I love conversations. I don't never prep my conversation because this conversation is going to go where it needs to go within the time that we have together. So you were able to paint again an image with words, right? And so one of the things that people villainize music all the time, right? They villainize hip hop music and rap music in general, and they always say like that's what's affecting the movements and behavior of our culture and our people. I don't know when this is coming out, but Philadelphia just had a loss with PNB Rock, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure a lot of young men saw themselves in within him. And I think about what you just said, and I don't know what the question is, but I know it goes to you were able to extrapolate the goodness out of it. You was able to take the good parts and where most people take the bad, the what consider is bad parts. Where did that come from? How is it? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
My thoughts around just like all the violence that's been happening in Philly, also just like the mentality of street culture is what we're experiencing is part of it is systemic, which is the defunding of neighborhoods and so many other communities. And then you see people are responding to that in a very survival way. So sometimes out of like poverty, we will see creativity. Not sometimes, all the time out of poverty, you see creativity. You will see someone get a milk carton and make a basketball court. And that's creativity, that's innovation, that's using what we have around us. But we also have to recognize why does that have to happen? Because playgrounds, basketball courts are not kept up. So these are, what's coming out of people. So when you see jobs move out of the neighborhoods, like I can't go 2 blocks to get a job. When I see that not only that happened, but I'm not having affordable housing. I am not getting the wages that I need. You'll see people respond with just like finding other means to do so. So when we think about gun violence, when we think about these moments and what is coming about in the music, if you reduce poverty, you get rid of all those things overnight. And I say overnight because in April 2020, and the height of the pandemic, we saw stimulus checks, we saw housing stop, as far as just like there's no evictions going on, there's no you don't have to worry about your mortgage or anything. All that is free, so you can worry about the things that are so essential, and crime went down so much. So this, to me, when I listen to trap music, what I'm hearing is people are finding a way. Now, we can frown on the way, but we should be really not just wagging our fingers at it, but recognizing that is coming out of systemic things. And a lot of times, I think when we talk about street culture, we always look at it like personhood. This person is bad, but we're not looking at the environment. And when I say environment, I'm not talking about the neighborhoods people are living in. I'm talking about I'm talking about something happened in 1930 that got all these people off of like 13 of Brooks to build housing, for Temple, and Temple slowly moving them out, where this black community is looking more like a campus than it ever did. And then so you see people packed up in these projects, in these living conditions, and they can't find jobbing, they can't even find a good grocery store to go to. And you witness that happen. And then there's no way to break that cycle with our current conditions, because it's systemic on both ways. It's just like, hey, we recognize you did something bad and we're going to hold you accountable. Then you arrest that person, but then that person goes further into debt because they got to pay $5 for some good food in prison. They got to pay these fines if their bed is not like made. So when I listen to trap music, I hear a cry. I also hear the champion of the audacity to do. And I also feel the sadness that these things are systemic. And this attitude is the PTSD from that, the response to that. And I understand it, I get it. But I admit sometimes I'm disheartened by it, but sometimes I feel with joy about it, because I like that audacity to do, to create, no matter what. So it is layered and nuanced.
I'm going to give a little pushback because I'm in the world with you, but I know I also the greatest way to defeat your enemy is to know what points they will make, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
I worked with nonprofits, I work with health organizations, I work with organizations where they had the funding and they provided services, but no one shows up for them. So it was free
Mm-hmm.
this, free food, free healthcare, free therapy, free whatever, and there's money and there's backing behind it, but then you don't get the individuals within that community to show up, or the community that needs it, I should say, to show up. To that, you say what?
I say it goes back to the fact as a generational response. Like, some of this stuff is going to happen overnight. Like, when we handle economic issues, they can happen overnight. Like, if we give reparations to black folks, what we saw in the pandemic is, with stimulus check, with college loan payments being freezed, the wealth gap between blacks and whites were decreased, not significant, but decreased by those things happening. So we can see that if reparations were enforced, those economic things could equal out. But there's still systemic things that are cultural, where it's just like there's intrinsic bias within the medical field, where we still have a high uh, um, mortality rate for like black women that are pregnant, where they're dying over something that in the first world country should be like an everyday thing, where it's like having a pregnancy should be something that is not something that you fear is going to kill you. But that's still happening in this country. You go to a therapist, you can sometimes reach that intrinsic bias of just like, oh, you're putting all this weight on me, you're creating all this bureaucracy for me. Like, just to make it personal, like, I have health insurance. My health insurance is pretty good. One of the barriers that I'm having with my health insurance is I got to go through the bureaucracy. I got to call this number, I got to call that number, and then to speak with a therapist. Then when I go to a therapist, I'm on this waiting list for like 6 months. So I think some of that has happened in the past with people, where they have had that stigma about it. And then you got other medical things. So like the medical part of it is just kind of hard because you have to build within a culture of just saying like we're doing better, we're recognizing these harms that we caused 50 years ago to grandparents that passed on this story to you or passed on that response to you. The food thing is sometimes I think with food you have to come with people. You have to come with people are at. So I like that the fact of just like, yo, they're creating grocery stores in Philadelphia. I think honestly, we can be block by block with it, just the same way that in some initiatives that we did with the COVID response, where there was a van pulling up to give out the vaccine. I think we can do that with groceries, where we just make it more accessible to people. Because I think a lot of times what people are suffering with is just like you're you're offering me food, but I still have to put on that labor of commuting there. And I don't know, sometimes people like if you told people right now, it's like if I give you a $15 minimum wage, um, would you be able to just would you be able to live off of that? And most people would say no, I'll be able to quit my third job.
Hmm.
And I think that's happening because like so many people are working 40 plus hours a week just to pay rent. And then they have to find a way to commute to get food. And what's happening is they're going to the food that's so accessible to them. They're going to the corner stores. They're, they're trying to plan around to make a grocery run once a month. So sometimes if we have like a food service and it's on that week where you didn't plan on getting groceries, I think sometimes that's happened. Like the food part tide in Philadelphia is so real that that's not an overnight thing. That has to be an infrastructure thing where we get all the grocery stores in locally, and also we offer delivery services that are either at no cost or at such low cost for people. But the economic things can be resolved overnight. The medical things are going to take about 2 or 3 years because there's been so much intrinsic bias. So many people get misdiagnosed in the medical field, where it's just like so many Black people have to do their Googles and know how to vet their Googles, that sometimes they just have such a mistrust. They don't even want to have that first conversation because they're just like, you know what, let me just do my Google. Because it is sometimes neglect by the doctors, neglect by the nurse, neglect by this, give me the wrong prescription, saying that I shouldn't have this, over prescribing me. And I, I feel it. So it's not an easy question when it comes to medical stuff. I think it's an easy answer. I don't think it's an easy answer when it comes to the medical industry. And while we're not in it, I think it becomes an easier answer with economics. And I think it's a short-term answer when it comes to food. I hope that answers your question.
Nah, and honestly, it answered it on all levels, and I'm thinking about one thing that shifted my perspective on the what was the pandemic, where they was talking about we get the 40 acres and a mule and all of the stuff, reparations, all the stuff that's the ongoing conversation. They would say, well, where would this money come from? Who has it? Da 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 da. And I'm like, all right, well, I started to become across that side of where, well, maybe they can't give it to us, and they don't have it, and we're who's responsible, and so on and so forth. And then you see the pandemic and how that was treated, and how they were able to give out money for a year for people to stay home, and all of
Yeah.
those different things. And then it was like, oh, this just doesn't this doesn't feel like it's a pandemic. Like gun violence doesn't affect y'all to the point where y'all feel like it's a pandemic. Housing, all unhousing, all of these different things doesn't create a sense of urgency for at a federal, state, or whatever level, government level, that the community at large that we come from doesn't feel like it needs an urgency of resources. To They give you one here and there and say, hey, we did this big amount of thing, where actually it's a small drop in a big bucket that needs support. And so I think that was a learning lesson. So and basically what you were saying is just like it needs to be a more strategic effort in systemizing resources and help for our community when it comes to that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's the answer to that, because like at the beginning of the pandemic, you had a lot of Black and brown folks that wasn't receiving the vaccine. And part of that was just because, you know, and I'm only talking about Philadelphia. We had an organization that was misusing the funds that they were getting from local government, and then you have the Black Doctor group that just made it local. They went right to North Philly. They said we're going to be out here. We're going to take everybody. We're going to treat you like we care for you, and that changed things. So I think as you was talking, I'm thinking the other systemic thing we could do is allow people to get their doctorate degree, allow people to get their doctorate degree in mental health and the medical field without going into debt. And we'll see a higher level of Black and brown folks doing this work. Because the thing that I discovered when I was starting to answer all my questions to that is like, and my homie KP says this all the time, is just like the Civil War happened and none of us got therapy for PTSD for being captured. None of us got that, and we're still dealing with that, and we don't have there's no clear studies or understanding of that unless you go to doctors that doctors and therapists in Canada, because Canada has a different relationship to slavery than us, and because of that, we're not dealing with just like the Black Americans in a way that is culturally sensitive when it comes to the medical field, when it comes to therapy, unless you have a therapist that's invested in that cultural sensitivity, understanding all those things. And I think if when we do that, because we have more doctors in that field and they take more ownership of that work, we can understand every nuance and every layer that's going on to fix these systemic things. But it's just so much debt to go to be a doctor that I think some people get frustrated by the workload and then just be like, "Dag, I got my doctorate degree and I'm only making $25,000 a year."
Yeah, no, and it's funny you said that. I started this podcast in 2018, and I started out of a way of not being able to know about the therapeutic component of like therapy process and all that stuff. Fast forward to now, I'm in school. I go to Drexel, in hopes to become a therapist one day. But to your point, um, it's expensive, and it can almost for one, I was paying out of pocket at one point. That was expensive. And then
Oh,
now I
whoa.
finally, because I
Yeah.
had to build that trust with them because of the way I left school when I left before. And now they like, all right, well, you got to prove to yourself as a student. And I'm like, all right, well, now I'm paying out of pocket. Now I'm in there in there as a student, and I'm like, man, how many people is that just a barrier? I just got in the game this year. Like, just really now I can get financial aid and all those different things. But even that's loans now. And now I got to go and run to make sure I get to get the help I need. So it's a lot of barriers to your credit and to your point where if you just make that pathway a little bit easier, I already got the passion, I already got the drive, I already got the will and want to do it. If y'all really, again, going back to creating that urgency of it being like, oh, it's not a lot of Black doctors or it's not a lot of Black individuals in these particular fields that care about the community they come from, then it kind of negates them from getting into there. And then now you wondering why you can't get the participation you're looking for within each field.
Absolutely. The financial burden is a barrier, and especially if, like, we can say, like, the living wage in Philadelphia is $22 an hour. Most people that are championing for a living wage are saying $15 an hour, and to me, that's a compromise. When we recognize the cost of living is $22 an hour, if you're working 40 hours a week and you have health insurance and you don't have a car, meaning you're commuting by bus. That's $22 an hour that you need to make 40 hours a week. And you got everything else. But that's not considering if you have you're coming from a low working class family. Meaning it's just like y'all inherited a lot of debt. Y'all might have had a funeral in the last generation that y'all still paying off, medical bills. Somebody could have had cancer, and everybody in the family is taking on that struggle. And then you put on the financial barrier of college. So it's just like, yo, I gotta pay off these loans. I gotta help. I gotta help pay off the hospital bill. I gotta also help out pay out the rent because that's demanded of me. Because like most people that are Black and brown, they're starting work at such an early age. It may not be documented, but it is work that you're doing where it might look like domestic work of just like, hey, my parents can't work the third shift, and the third shift is like coming home, cooking a meal, cleaning the house, doing something that is like correlating family time, or just like putting a movie together, getting everybody's schedule together. That as a young one, I have to do that work of like, yo, I got to sweep the floor, I'm gonna put something in the microwave and stuff like that. That's work. That's work, and a lot of folks take that on because this if you're working 3 jobs, or you're working one job and you got 2 hustles or something else to make the household work, it's hard to do that other stuff where it's just like, dag, and that's a lot of times put on people. So it's just like, let's say you're not even giving up finances, but if you're the person that's leading all the get-togethers in your family, and that's keeping everybody together, that's a lot of work on you. Of just like, yo, I got to set up the next family union. I got to do the movie night. I got to make sure somebody knows to call such and such to check on them. So it's a lot of barriers that I think discourage people from going as far. And I think when that representation is seen in the medical field and the therapy field, we have more participation on both ends, as far as people getting in the field and also people being participating in that. But it's hard to find a Black therapist for that exact reason.
Listen, if you're still looking, my organization that I work for, I can put a word in for you. We got free therapy. So first of all, free therapy. You're gonna get matched up with a provider of color, and we definitely are looking for a lot more participants in the Pennsylvania area. So please go sign up at blackmenhill.org. It'll be great for you all. Shifting gears a little bit, you talked about painting pictures with words, and I actually think I'm thinking about hieroglyphics from back in the day in the pyramids and things of that nature, and how we used to communicate through pictures, and that was a primary communication method. And then now we're going into emojis and things of that nature, and that's how we communicate in that space. Talk about the significance in communication through poetry and poetic measures, because I think it's a lost, I don't say it's a lost art, but an underappreciated art, where people don't realize the goal, the significance of it.
I I think that in community there always been a storyteller. There always been someone that's sharing a story of what's going on in the neighborhood, and that informs people through it, be through uh the and I think that's always needed, because we need someone that can inform and entertain. We need someone that is connecting continuously, that can tell people stories when they're not in proximity. And then we also need someone that is amplifying voices that are being ignored. Um, and, for me, recognizing how that role has been consistent in society since society been society, I feel really like, really like, I feel like this social responsibility. I always go back to this uh this phrase that James Baldwin said, and I'm saying it verbatim. I mean, not verbatim. I'm not saying it verbatim, where he says the 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 work of the artist is to make the movement irresistible. And I think that's the social responsibility we all have as art. I think all art is political because it speaks to the voices. It allows the voices that are being ignored to be amplified and heard. And then, some art is more intentional, where they're doing things that are very tangible, that is allowing people to be in spaces that they otherwise wouldn't be. And as you said, it's just like, I I'm just thinking about this idea, and so I'm speaking in draft right now. I think what's the great thing about, you know the Black community is just like how creative we are, where I think some things go undiagnosed because we make accessibility through our creation of just like seeing that a bridge needed to be happened. So I'm a person that has have always had dyslexia. And so when folks were making memes and they were making gifs, that just made language more accessible to me. And it was making us all laugh. And I think about just like, yeah, there was moments where I felt a sense of just like being underserved in a classroom where I was comprehending everything, but you were overweighing me with all the writing tasks. um that I was underserved in that way. It was just like, yo, if I could orally tell you what's going on, this would be so much better for me than writing 5 pages. um and then there was other moments of just like humiliation, just like, oh, I didn't want to be the person to read out loud. But there was also these moments of just like, yo, I'm sharing just with my homies, you know over something that would have took me a paragraph to write, and we all get the joke.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? We created that community. We created that meme. We created these expressions and these shortened ways of doing things that was amplifying so much more that we wanted to say, and that created accessibility to me. And sometimes that was very intentional, sometimes that was latent, but it created a way for me, and I I champion those moments because I love that about us, of just like we do that, where we create these moments for everybody to be seen, because I think there's a lot more people out there that's dyslexic like I am, but may not realize it, because we have created these moments to just like kind of talk to each other, where the writing is not as much as a barrier as you just being able to express yourself.
Man, this is why I don't have no questions, because I love what we talking about. And one of the things, man, that I feel so conflicted on. I got two sons, one both in grade school, one in kindergarten, going to kindergarten, one is in the third grade, I believe, fourth grade. And I think all the time about how at the way that we learn has been colonized so much that you can't even. I don't want to say you can't, it's hard to navigate the system that's in place, because that's when we talk about systemic, where I thought about homeschooling him, but I got other things that I have to do, bills, or recording this podcast, job, all these different things. So it's like I almost have to be complicit to a system that I know may not meet
Mhm.
all of his needs because of
Mhm.
the obligations. And then you think about what you just said about my son. Know he's a talker. What we're doing right now, he I will listen and do about 20 of these a day and probably gather so much information, as opposed to where he at 8 hours a day. And it's like, oh, I gotta sit and do this, or like you said, writing all of it. You overvalue the writing, you overvalue this portion, the how much I can retain, as opposed to if you just talk to him, he's gonna retain that just off of his natural gifts. And I don't know what the question is within that, but just how it's a catch 22 where our system is not set up for us to succeed. In the ones that do is because they've learned to they either had the natural gift of what the system works for, or they found a way to beat the odds against it. And I know you do a lot of work within that. You teach, and how do you navigate that portion of it? Because the people don't even put the value into the arts. They don't value that as a valuable component of education.
Yeah, it's to answer your question, it was something that it is a skill. It's something like there's people that will teach you how to take the SATs, and they're teaching you how to pass the test. They're not teaching you necessarily how to apply what you're learning. They're teaching you how to answer these trivial questions correctly within a timely fashion, and how they're going to try to trick you out of doubting yourself so you can write the wrong answer and not be tricked by that system, so you write the right answer. And I think because so much of so much of learning is about testing, we don't do the actual we don't value the actual application of what we're learning. Whereas just like I had a tough time with algebra, trying to figure out the variable of x so many times, because I just didn't get it. But then when I finally got that X was always what I was doing in my life of just figuring out the variables and circumstances that I didn't know, but understanding the control factors that I did always know. Of the simple fact of just like I was in high school and I was just like, yo, if my homie got $13 because I know he got paid this week. I got a few dollars because I just got paid last week. We don't know how much the other homies got, but if I can pull a little bit from him, we can pay for everybody to come there. X was the unknown. My homies that I didn't know if they had money or not. When I started seeing
That's a
algebra like
bar,
that,
bruh. That's a
yeah,
bar.
yeah. When I started seeing algebra like that, when I could start putting a story to it, and not just the like word problems that I was given in class, but something that I was seeing so present in my life, I knew I got algebra because I was applying everything that I felt was so difficult about it to my actual life. And that was nothing that you could test me on. It was not a single question that was saying to me, it was just like, how does algebra pop up in your life? How can you identify algebra pop in your life? But when I was in 10th going into 11th grade, I got like a C in algebra. By the time I got in 11th grade, I saw it, but nobody could test me on that. No one could test me on that. And I think that's a lot of like what's happening is there's so many different types of learners. We also recognize that learning is not linear, meaning just like something I did not get fractions until way in my adulthood. Like I learned fractions in 3rd grade, but I did not get fractions until I started having to do an art project, and I had to just be like, yo, I need 2/3 of this fabric. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And but nobody could say like no one can change my grade in the 3rd grade. And I'm not saying they should, but I also think we should recognize that we should give allowance to time. That not everything is going to be got in 8 months. But if you're showing so much effort and improvement and you're showing application of it, it's merit to move forward. And I think that's how we should really assess people. Like we should not do tests, but we should see the assessments of just like, can you apply what you learn enough to show that you're going to improve on time to get these ideas? Because learning is not linear, you know. So something I learned in 3rd grade, it didn't become really clear to me because until it became really applicable to my life, and then I started to get like, what is 2/3, what is 1/3, all that stuff. I did it well enough to pass the test, but then I forgot the information. You know what I'm saying? So like I think that is, and then I also think because like we talked about in this earlier on, is just like since we don't have preventative care because it's so many systemic problems, we're not regularly seeing doctors, we're not regularly seeing therapists, that we miss out on so many things that are going on in a classroom that is a barrier to just like learn. Because it's just like sometimes I didn't have the language to what I'm feeling. And I didn't know I was being profiled by some of my teachers. I didn't know what to call that. You know, if I could have put language to that words and really been able to advocate for myself, I would have had different teachers. You know, I would have had different interactions with folks because I would have had language. So I take a lot of pride when I meet someone that's young and it was just like, yo, I'm dealing with a microaggression right now. Oh, I need time to decompress because I didn't have that language. And I think that is a privilege that, you know, when I see young ones, they have, because the therapy I'm going through right now is becoming more accessible to them because there's more folks like myself that is just writing the blogs online, doing the YouTube videos, making the TikTok. And I think for most part, most of them are doing a good work of vetting that, of saying, where's your sources at? How was this study being tested to be able to say like, yo, I think I have dyslexia, so I need the information to come to me like this. I can't read the book, give me the audio book. You
Mm.
know what I'm saying? You
Mm.
know, I can't take in the audio book because I don't have all the time because I'm working. So can you sit down with me and have a 30-minute spill about this so I can get the major point and sit with it for a minute? So I think a lot of that has to happen in the classroom, but a lot of it is not, because we're we're doing we're teaching for tests, and that's just systemic, because teachers get hired or fired by how well their class do on a test. And then we have a system that is all punishment based versus just like emotional learning based, where it's just like, if you're acting up in class, I'm going to suspend you. I'm not going to figure out what's the causation of you acting up in class to get you the resources that you need. There have been times where I have seen a student act up in class because they work 40, 50 hours a week, which goes against the child labor laws, but they got to do so for their household. They're hoping that that money is going to be on their next check. It's not happening. So they get frustrated because all the bills are due. I'm supposed to help out my family. I can't take in this learning right now. And then the water is already off. So people are coming to me about like, oh, I stink, or I'm worried about all those other issues. And then the first time they get any crack or joke on what they're going through, they swing on a person. They stop coming to class. And then we when I say we, the system, then punish them for being pretty much poor, just in poverty, just going through a struggle, by taking them out of school versus just like, yo, let me set you up with a social worker to see how can we get your water back on. Let me set you up with a therapist, and I want you to figure out if this therapist is going to work with you to talk about your problems. Let me get a lawyer to stop this child labor law from happening, from them breaking this child labor law, because now you made me inform about that. That's 3 sets of people that need to handle one problem that we don't have in our school system right now. We don't have social workers at every school. We don't have a way for scholars to advocate for themselves that's not going to someone that already caused them harm. You can't go to a principal that's going to be your judge and your jury about something. You have to go to someone outside of that to advocate for yourself, because you're already doing the advocate for yourself, because you're saying, I need to talk to someone outside of you. And then we also have to recognize these systemic barriers that are outside the classroom, where it does deal with, our domestic life, because our domestic life is important to how we can be in class. I can't think about a paper. I can't think about math if my water's off, or I don't know what I'm going to eat. You know what I'm saying? So these things are so important for us to be in class, but we supposed to act like they're unimportant, of just like, yo, your grandma's going through something, but you still got a final today. What you gonna do? Miss the final to be with your grandma? And you saying yes. All right, cool. You gonna have to retake this next year. What? And that's the system we live in. So there's so many faults in it, that it doesn't allow to that people are acting on their survival, where they're saying to themselves, of just like, I have to learn this system, so I'm gonna put myself in this system so I know how to navigate it. So I run into people where I go to these PWIs, these like predominantly white institutions, and I do poetry, and I talk to some of this just the Black scholars there, and they were just like, yo, I had a scholarship at HBCU. I had a scholarship to Temple, which is like more a blacker college. Well, it's give or take. There could be an argument there. But I decided to go to this all white college because I've been in so many Black spaces, but I know the world is not set up for me like that, and I don't know how to navigate these white spaces. So I wanted to pick up these skills, and I'm like, Dad, I can't even knock that. I can't even knock that.
This is why I'm at Drexel. I just want y'all to know that is why I'm at Drexel.
Because it's a skill to know how to just like do things in your survival. Whereas just like, we had an incident at the Emmys, where Quentin who I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. I'm probably not. But the writer of Abbott Elementary,
Mm-hmm.
she had an awful moment where, just like whiteness tried to outshine her moment of glory, and she had to handle it in grace. And when I recognized her handling it in grace, I recognized, oh, she knows how to navigate white spaces. Because if I show that I'm so upset, I'm so angry with the vile emotions, all the stereotypes and the casting is going to put it on me versus just like this problem that's actually happening. So I need to be able to control the narrative with grace. And so much, so much of the black experience is that of just like, yo, I got to do this. So it's not put on me as being the aggressor when I'm actually just responding to some aggression.
Mm.
Mm, you know, so if I want to resolve this problem and put all the attention on the aggression and not being the aggressor because of these stereotypes, all these other isms that I'm dealing with, I have to handle this with grace. So I gotta be like, yo, if you refer back to my other email, you will get clarification on this issue versus just like you haven't listened to me until this point. Everything hits the fan,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
now you want me to resolve it. So I can't say it like that. I gotta say like, yo, refer to my other emails. You know?
You learn their language and their code of, and I'm just now learning that. Like you
Yeah.
said, like going into the space because unfortunately the society is not set up in a way where my natural reactions or our natural way of doing things it won't benefit you in the long road on the long haul. So you kind of I don't want to say conform, but navigate the space enough. Like you said, Quinta Brunson, shout out to her. Hopefully I can get her on in the future. But definitely navigated that space because it comes with the accolades. It comes with so much you, and a lot of the things that you were talking about is our reactions in the short term that hold us forever in the long term. And individuals and the powers that be not recognizing what's happening in the behind the scenes that's been going around it. But I wanted to transit because I know we almost out of time because you was I ain't want to stop you. You was dropping gems.
Oh, word.
But I definitely want to play this clip because it spoke to me and is the reason why we got connected. Shout out to Duchess, man. She felt like you were doing some great work and she knew what I was doing and wanted to get us connected. So shout out to you. I appreciate you for bringing me into light in connection with this brother because he has a lot of great knowledge and a lot of great things that he has going on. But one of the things that I wanted to pull up on the podcast, make sure y'all go follow LindoYes on social media and follow everything that he has going on, because he's putting out some great information, education, and entertainment. And I know a lot of people need to be tapped into it. But going back to this, I want to get your perspective after I play it, but I'm gonna play it for the listeners, just so you can check it out. But please go follow it because it is a better visual than it is audio for those who are only listening. I'm gonna play it real quick. Want to be black man, held in quiet, small spoon, soft body. I feel as though I am black man, holding in loudness, spoon fed that I need to be hard body. I feel like nobody. When somebody kills my softness to be tough, call it tough love. Tough love is being punched until you don't cry, and crying is the only thing that stops the punching from hurting as much. Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, talk to me about the thinking, what made you want to put it out, just the overall feeling around this.
It was a response to my therapist. My therapist had said to me that like a lot of your poetry and a lot of just art that you create is coming out of just like urgency and trauma that you experience. But I want you to start thinking about just asking for what you need so you don't experience those things and becoming aware of that. And she told me like it doesn't have to be a poem or nothing like, but just like for your own personal like growth, what you need to be able to go into spaces and recognize that you're upset or recognize you're sad or recognize you're content or just recognize you're joyful and just get the things that you need to better yourself in those spaces or just better yourself in life. And I thought about that for like a year and a half. And that poem was a response to that. Eventually after like my own like changing things in my life, I was finally able to sit down with the art and be like, all right, cool, this is exactly what I need and this is why I need it.
Man, and it went super viral. I seen and people love it.
Yeah.
And it spoke to me as soon as I seen it, and because it is something that I think it resonates with a lot of individuals in their journey and that idea of tough love and how it creates a tough person and people don't
Mhm.
realize that long term and what that does. I know we're ready to close out. Any lasting remarks that you want to share with the people? I'll do this really quickly because I was going to do it, but please, please, please go get some merch. Go check out the website. Go check everything out that this brother has going on, man. Because it is for our people. It's for the individuals who feel like they just need to express themselves, man. Like, and I think a lot of us understand that I'm going to steal something from you that and it's not in a bad way stealing. I noticed with the Patreon that you was like all the tiers are the same. You're gonna get the same thing. It just more of an investment of what you feel. And I was like, man, that's a phenomenal idea. Because people people may just naturally want to give you stuff, but I don't want to take over that. But I'm like, that is a phenomenal idea. That's a different way of viewing the points. Any lasting remarks you want to leave the people with?
um, I just want to tell people, uh, we're all in this struggle trying to make the world so gentle that we can walk around barefoot. And I don't want any system that is oppressing us to make us feel alienated, where we feel like we're isolated with these emotions. So I want you to recognize that we're all in the struggle together and that you are not alone in it. And even though the system has failed you, you're never a failure. And that's it.
Mm. On that note, please share something that Lindo said with a friend. Please share this podcast, share this episode. Leave a comment. Say like just quote what he said on the Apple Podcast page so people can know to tune into this episode. Because it was very powerful and perspective shifting from my end. Again, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and do all that good stuff to make this platform good. And last but not least, please remember that this platform has never been about being a replacement to therapy. It's an alternative place where people share therapeutic stories. Thank you for listening.